As I said at the top of the show, we're in the midst of a $100,000 fund drive. And on the 25th of June, we're going to be having the next of a series of 3 live streams. And I'm here with Annie Day.
Hello.
All right. Annie and I were on the last live stream together. Why don't you tell people what they, what to expect and what to prepare for?
Well, if you've been watching this show, then you've heard how all of society is being ripped apart, and left to its own, it's going to be a catastrophe. But you've also heard how the RevComs are aiming to have a big impact with revolution and to build up the forces for revolution. So this is what people need to tune in on Sunday, July 25th to find out what they're donating to. But to also, and one of the key missions of this live stream and why we broke it up this way, we have to build up lots and lots of donors to this revolution. So if you're watching this, you should plan to tune in next Sunday, but you should also think about how to go all out in the next 8 days to reach everyone you can. Ask them to tune in and ask them to donate. Show them this proclamation that you've been hearing about. We are the RevComs. Watch this show with them, talk with them, ask them to tune in, and ask them to give.
So, we on this point, you said, we said on the last show, we're raising money, but we're not just raising money, we're raising donors. Why is that important?
I think a few things. When you win people to support this revolution, you're making 2 key transformations. One, you're transforming the revolution because we're raising the funds that we need to have the kind of impact that's required. But you're also transforming the people you're asking. They're going from people on the sidelines watching to people taking sides, taking the side of the revolution. I think I just want to emphasize one aspect of that is we actually have to ask people to sustain this revolution, to give $5 a month, to give $50 a month, to come into an organized relationship themselves and to then be part of asking others. Another thing that happens is people start thinking through, even if they don't give you a donation at that point, they start thinking through what's worth sacrificing for. This is part of changing people. And look, a lot of people are going to say no the first time you ask them. I mean, one of the things that you learn when you read about fundraising and donations is people say often that translates to no for now. So that means we have to go very, very broadly and widely, not just to the political people, though we should go to them, but to everyone you know who cares, your friends, your family, strangers, to actually reach people who are agonizing and not underestimate the way that the very breaks that you were talking about at the top of the show are impacting millions of people right now. And then there's one other aspect of this in terms of the raising donors that I want to speak to is the raising the funds is really essential. We have to have an impact. But when you're talking about raising donors, you're talking about building up a force for revolution that's serious about having an impact on all of society. That's an actual, working to go out and be a force that's actually contending for impact. I mean, one of the examples I think is worth learning from is something like the Bernie Sanders campaign. There was a big news at the time where they reached to over 4 million donors, and most of those were small donors. And what that conveyed is not just that here's this guy running for office, but that there was a force behind him, a movement behind him. Now, that was a force and a movement that he was leading back into the killing confines of the bourgeois electoral bullshit of this system. But there's something to learn from that in terms of building up a force that's serious about going for revolution. That's what you're conveying. That's why it matters to build up that donor base for revolution and urgently now.
Annie, I want to get into some questions of strategy, but I think first that you brought this out, this proclamation. We see getting this up all over the country this summer. To print this 4-color poster in the hundreds of thousands, hopefully, as we get people organized around this, costs a lot of money. The studio costs a lot of money. You mentioned sustaining. Sustaining is very important. We have a Patreon program for this show, the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. There's other ways to sustain the revolution that you can find on revcom.us. But watching this show, reading this is what will help people give money. We had an experience last week's show. Somebody who's a friend of the revolution played this for their mother who's in her 90s. And after watching the last program, especially the opening with BA and myself, she donated $500. And this was my understanding, not something she's done often. And so I think there's a lot that people can see to support. But there's a bigger question here. What does raising money have to do with the strategy for making a revolution?
I think it's a good question. I think I would say, think about the stakes of it right now. You talked earlier about how society, like I said, is being ripped apart and how things could come to a head, quickly. Think about what a crime it would be if in that situation, the only forces, in a situation in which the whole direction of society is being called into question, the only forces that were able to actually determine the direction of things were, on the one hand, the fascists, or on the other hand, a section of the ruling class that were seeking to just restore the norms of this horrific system, or maybe you had some wokesters or some movement forces that were leading things to a disastrous dead end. This cannot be the future. And we have everything to do with bringing forward a force of revolutionary communists able to lead millions of a revolutionary-minded force to actually be determined to fight for the direction of society in an actual emancipatory way at that point. But those forces, those organized forces, have to be built starting now. And so when you're talking about reaching out to people, your friend's mother, their cousins, their neighbors, the stranger on the street, your congregation, the people in a housing project down the block. When you talk about reaching people en masse to start making a contribution, whether it's $5 a month, like I said, whether it's a one-time donation of $500, whatever it is, and then people come closer and they start reaching out to others, then you can see how a force for revolution could grow exponentially in this kind of situation.
Yeah, if you're watching this and you're saying, well, that sounds good, but I don't really know if that's possible or what it's really going to be for. Well, the most important thing there is you don't know. So you need to find out. And part of finding out is supporting getting this material out so thousands of people and hundreds of thousands of people can find out, so that this show can be advertised, and instead of a few thousand people or 10,000 people seeing the interviews with Bob Avakian, that hundreds of thousands of people see that and millions of people see it. And I think it's an application of what you're talking about. But why don't you tell people just briefly what it is they can do between now and the 25th of June?
Well, one, plan to tune in on Sunday, June 25th, 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern on this channel. Tune in, make a donation. But I want to challenge everybody to think about a minimum of 10 people that you can reach out to between now and then, and call them, text them, knock on their door, actually reach them. And like you said, watch the show with them, talk with them about this proclamation. That's number one. If you're in a city with a revolution club or a group of RevComs, get together, watch this, talk about it, and make really ambitious plans. How much funds do you want to raise? But also, how many of these proclamations do you want to get out between now and July 4th on the walls and in people's hands? And if you write to us between now and the live stream, then we can announce the goals nationally and start knitting together that national movement. If you're not in a city with RevComs or a Revolution Club, then get together with your friends and make plans. If you want us to ship you a ream of these or a bundle of these, then DM us at the RevComs or email us at getorganizedforrevolutiontour@gmail.com. And if you're by yourself somewhere and you're inspired by this, you want to be part of this, but you don't know how to start, then reach out to us and we can work together with you. Look, I'll say if you're one person or you're 10 people and you step into this and are part of fighting for it, then you're part of a national movement for revolution. And this movement very quickly has to have a big impact, putting the strategy for revolution before people, putting the vision in this constitution for the new socialist republic in front of people all throughout society. And really broadening the horizons, breaking open the horizons of people all throughout society, raising funds, on the move, changing the whole world.
All right, Annie. That is the mission of this fund drive. It's the mission of this show. And stay right there because I'm going to say goodnight on behalf of yourself. You want to say goodnight yourself?
Good night, y'all.
All right. Y'all, all right. And I'm going to say goodnight for the whole Revolution Nothing Less crew, for Sansara Taylor, who wasn't able to be here tonight. But as I said earlier at the top of the show, tune in next week. She's going to make a major statement for us on the anniversary of the overturning of the right to abortion. And so with that, get ready for the live stream on Sunday the 25th, and we'll see you next week on Friday. We'll see you before Sansara's Dispatch, but we'll see you on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So good night for the whole crew at the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show.